I have been following the development of Hollowbody since late 2022. I discovered it just too late to back it on Kickstarter, but I eagerly anticipated its release all the same. The game is pitched as a throwback to the PlayStation 2 era of survival horror games, with a tech-noir twist to the setting. The game is out now, so let's take a look to see if it was worth the wait. Hollowbody takes place in a distant dystopian future version of the United Kingdom. A bioterrorism attack before the events of the game devastated most of the western coast, and the survivors had to flee to the walled, quarantined city of Aonis. The story proper starts about 60 years after the devastation, and puts us in the shoes of a smuggler named Mika. Mika sets off looking for her friend Sasha, who disappeared during a research excursion beyond the walls of Aonis. Mika's car crashes and she's forced to make her way through the dilapidated city outskirts on foot. As the game progresses, there are small flashback scenes of Mika reminiscing about Sasha in between the esoteric weirdness that you would expect from a horror story like this. There are documents and radio recordings to find of what life was like for the former outskirts residents before their untimely end. I think the game does a great job with the radio logs. All of them paint a really vivid picture of what life of the subject was like. The fifth signal in particular really stuck out to me for how well done it was. Mika herself is a solid protagonist. She falls pretty perfectly into the regular person with humorous personality quirks niche pretty well. For example, her inner monologue has amusingly close to home reactions such as, "No way I'm touching that, I might catch an infection," as well as some pretty tremendous disdain for taking a bath instead of showering, which caused me no end of amusement. When the likable inner monologue comes together with her determination to find Sasha, it makes Mika pretty easy to root for. As mentioned before, Hollowbody presents itself like a throwback to the PS2 era of horror games. I would wager to say that it's more of the psychological flavor of horror rather than hard survival. What I'm getting at is that as long as you don't take it upon yourself to kill every enemy that you come across, you should get by alright. Health and ammo drops are pretty well balanced. I don't remember ever trying to pick up any ammo, only to be told that I was already holding too much of it. And I do recall instances where I went long stretches without any health items, so that really enhanced the tension in that regard. The combat options are pretty standard for this kind of game. They consist of a pistol, a shotgun, and a couple of melee weapons that you can find lying around. The guns are unwieldy in the right kind of ways for the kind of game that this is, and the melee weapons have their own unique animations, rather than a repeating swing back and forth. This meant that when I wanted to use one of them, I actually had to pay attention to the enemy's attack pattern, instead of flailing wildly until they were dead. I found myself taking notice of the unique enemy AI throughout the game. In most horror games, it usually seems like the monsters will be on a set path and only deviate from it once you venture too close to them. In Hollowbody, the creatures seem to roam much more freely. This led to a moment later in the game where, during an instance of backtracking, there was a handful of enemies that I had previously evaded that all converged on a fork in the path. It was a manner of surprise that usually doesn't happen when I play this kind of game. Hollowbody settles into a pretty consistent rhythm as far as the gameplay loop is concerned. The open-ended, ruined city environments act as the connective tissue between the more narrowed-down and specific levels or dungeons, for a lack of a better term. The dungeons are where you will usually be solving puzzles and looking for the increasingly weird key items to open the horror doors to progress. These are also the areas that will push you into the harder to avoid enemy encounters. The level design of the game is very well put together. The first portion of the city and the apartment level are both excellent slow burns into the first enemy encounter and the introductory puzzles that the player will be solving. From there, each area adds on another layer of complexity or intensity. I will give special mention to the sewer level for being one of the least tedious and most easy to navigate sewer levels I've ever played in a horror game. The game constantly had me motivated to search every corner I could for supplies or a lore document, and I was always interested in seeing where the game would take me next. Hollowbody absolutely nails the PS2 era aesthetic that it's going for. It is so committed to the bit that it honestly feels like some kind of lost media that was unearthed in the back room of a GameStop somewhere. The color palette and even details such as the texture of the water really sell the illusion. Other extra details include the momentary screen blackening between rooms to simulate a loading from zone to zone. Atmospherically, the game really nails what it's going for. The fixed camera angles managed to set up some really good shots. There's a shot at the beginning of the game that I really enjoyed. Sasha is searching for one of her expedition members, while this massive cave looms ominously in the majority of the image. And there's a broken gas mask right in the foreground that only the player can see. It is one of the most striking visuals in the game. It always impresses me when a horror game manages to look so grimy that it conveys a sense of what it would probably smell like. The entirety of the apartment level, I was thinking, wow, this place looks like it would probably smell like a combination of damp basement and that rotten eggs in the water kind of odor. There's also the black ichor that manifests itself throughout the game that is often described by Mika as spreading in a way that's similar to mold, and that served as the cherry on top of the dilapidation cake. The voice acting that is present in this game is really well done. Kirsten Ria's performance as Mika is very solid. She really sells the appropriate combination of tired and increasingly more terrified as the game progresses. The voice acting in the radio signals was also quite excellent. Signal 5 with the two ladies that used to occupy the abandoned house was one of the most captivating couple of minutes in the game. The one with the kid being told off by the security agent at the playground was also really well performed. Hollowbody is an easy recommendation if you are a fan of horror games. I think the game's biggest strength is that despite being committed to being a throwback sort of game, it knows when to break the illusion. It is a game that is self-aware of its niche and knows just where to throw in a twist. By no means do you need to be a survival horror expert to enjoy the game, but if you are a fan of the genre, there's enough here to keep you on your toes. There were a number of times where the game zigged when I thought it was going to zag. These twists, combined with a solid gameplay foundation and a great atmosphere, made Hollowbody intriguing throughout the entire experience.